So thanks for inviting me. My first meetup was the one where the other Kevin presented the work that he was doing and putting up on GitHub and npm. And so when there was an invitation to add new speakers, I was glad because Kevin's presentation really made me think a lot about what our company does. So I've titled the presentation "Expanding Your Audience," and what I'm talking about is your GitHub audience. So a bit about me. I'm not a very good coder, just putting that out there. I think you could think of me kind of like a journalist. I'm somebody that understands the field pretty well, and I've been in it for 30 years, and I've been a manager of custom development projects and for both web and mobile, and even legacy backend for many, many years. But the last time I coded was so long ago that it's embarrassing. And as I said, there we go. I wanted to talk about code sharing. And so, some of you, hopefully a lot of you, put your code up on GitHub, and you probably put it up with an MIT license. And then you go to some extra trouble to package it, as a node package. And then you probably go to even more trouble to put up some code examples on one of these. So why are you doing this? Oh yeah, and maybe some of you are starting to use this too. So why do you go to the trouble in the first place, and why are you going to this extra trouble to package it out for these multiple channels? I think it's because you're a good person, and you want your code to reach as many people as possible so that they don't have to recode it. They don't have to keep reinventing the wheel in this industry. And so today I'm going to talk to you about the audience size, in that effort. And I think that right now, at best, you're reaching something like 3% of the people that really want to use your code. There are a rough estimate of about 2 million developers in the US. I'm only using the US because these numbers are easier to come by for a quick presentation. But there's about 64 million manager level people who are in business, who probably have lots of ideas. In fact, I know they do because of the background I come from, have lots of ideas on how an app could add value to their customers and to their business, and can't get it. So it'd be, they just don't have the skills to download your package from npm and integrate it into an app, but they'd like to. So the answer is Nocode. And I thought about, Nocode has a bad rap. It had a bad rap with me, even. Over my career, the idea of an application generator immediately produced visions of bloated and bloated code with tons of broken and unwanted stuff in it. But that's really no longer the case with Nocode. I think a lot of no-code providers have figured out how to generate code that's terse and without bloat and without unnecessary packages. Even basic, even basic tool. It's a lot easier when you have basic tools like Webpack to do the job for you. So I asked myself, well, what were the success factors for GitHub? And I said, it's I think first of all, it was multilingual, because a lot of standardization efforts in the world of coding, I think, have failed because they all expected, C standard library, C++ standard libraries, or Objective-C and Next Step, and they all assumed that everyone was going to come use their language, which just is never the case. And so I think that very important for GitHub that it was multilingual. It was also free, equally important, And then last but not least, it was extensible, so people could do some cool stuff with it. If I think about what I believe is required for no-code success factors, it's some of the same factors, but in a different order. I think that first of all, for a no-code platform to be successful, it has to be free, because you're dealing with people that may or may not be able to successfully use it for what they want. It has to be free for them to get there. Otherwise, the barrier is too high. The second thing is, it has to be extensible. I can't lock them into a dead end. People are going to be hesitant to build a lot of business value on something that is technological dead end, or that can't be enhanced, by with custom programming later on down the line. And then in the last place, because I think there are a lot of successful no-code platforms that aren't particularly multilingual, but I think in the long term, the industry is going to want to something that is truly multilingual. And of course, I think that because it's in my own self-interest. So let me do a quick demo. And the demo I had in mind, I could walk you through like really stupid stuff like hello world. It might as well take 2 seconds. So here's your hello world. You drop you drop a text field on screen. You drop a button on screen. You align them both. So here in the preview, it's off to the left. Of course, you have wonderful tools to do responsive design. And then you say your button here, say hello. And then you define an interaction for it. And I've predetermined, by the way, here, let me just do this thing. I've pre-set up or pre-created a little memory, a global variable called hello. So I link it, I bind it to that field. And then here, when a user clicks, I want to save data into that global. And I'm going to save hello. This is more of the consumer demo, but still, it might have value just to see it running in a platform, my platform, of course. And it's just going to take a second to build. And I think we're there. So if I click up, there it goes. Hello world, easy as that. It's not aligned. I'm just going to click on it. I'm going to say, you know what, I'd like to center align this. I'm going to regen the code. I'm going to say hello, and wonder of wonders, it's aligned. And I could do the same thing with creating a list and a grid, but I'm not going to do that with you guys because, as I said, that's more of a consumer demo. What I'm going to do with you guys, I'm going to jump to a plugin, because the built-in functions of this platform cover about, let's say 70, maybe 80% of the functions that any app is going to have. But part of what makes apps wonderful are custom functions, custom look and feel. So there's always going to be some percentage, this long tail percentage of functionality or look and feel that's not in the no-code platform, which is why it's so important that it be extensible. And what I wanted to sell you on today was how easy it is to make it extensible for this platform, which is free to everybody forever, and maybe hopefully convince a couple of you that the 30 minutes it might take you on top of what you've already invested for GitHub and for and for wrapping it as an NPM package would be worth it to make your libraries accessible by business users who can only drag and drop. So again, I'm just going to go to get some data that I preset. I've preset the values. I'm just going to give it a color, and now I'm going to open this and I'm going to rebuild. It's going to take a second because it's pulling down from npm. So while it's doing that, I'm just going to open the an editor so that we can take a look at what's going on in here. So here I have the plugin. I have some identifiers. Oh, it looks like the build is finished. Almost. There we go. There's our chart. Now this chart is the recharts plugin from npm, or it's the recharts library from npm. So what we did here was I took a look at the code sandbox for recharts. I found a bar chart I liked, and I took a look and I saw basically two things. I looked at what were my imports, so I captured my imports, and then I looked at what were the properties that I wanted my end users to be able to manipulate. So I wanted them to be able to set the data property, to set the data, the labels for the axis, x-axis, or y-axis rather, and I wanted them to be able to find a fill color and values for the bars. So, and then basically I just took the code out of Code Sandbox, and I stripped away all the stuff I didn't want, like grid lines, Cartesian grid it had, and a couple of it had pop-up labels. I replaced. I put it in as a template literal, so I replaced the props that I wanted to control with a var name, right? A reference to a var name. And then what I did was I just went up here and I wrote some JavaScript to create this user interface over here. So choose a data sheet. So this is a live environment. So if I save it, you'll see that I just got all caps data here. So there's three scopes of execution in this plugin, which is kind of interesting. First, there's the live execution, which executes at design time, which is what I just showed you. This is where I can capture data from an end user. We have about 13 different control types. And then I have a bunch of code here, which simply is to store the state in case I switch away from the plugin and switch back in, it will swap the state back in. And then I have a second scope of execution, which is a compile time. So we have basically what we do is we have a transpiler. We transpile from this language independent neutral representation of an application, and we grab bits and pieces of source code and compile them together. And so standard, I mean, we're not doing much different from, let's say, what SAS or less does. So I have my import statements that I want, and these are basically these are entry points into our design compiler. It's maybe another way of saying compiler directive. So I gave a compiler directive to pull this stuff down from npm. Then I have some boilerplate code, and then I have some setup code right here. So this will execute once for every render. And so I just say, what I'm doing here is kind of funny. So I'm referring to a data sheet, but since the data sheet could change at execute time, at runtime, I'm not putting anything in static. So instead what I do is I grab some code, which is a reference to the data sheet at runtime, and I stuff it in a variable. And then I do some indirection. And then I take the things that are static that are not going to change at runtime, like the name of the column that contains the bar chart category names, or the name of the column where the data values are, or the color that I picked. And so I plug in some code that will access this at runtime, which is stuffed into this variable here. And then I pass on these literal, sometimes my lingo fails me. I pull these values into a variable with no indirection. And then I build this little bit of JSX code. And I inject here, I'm injecting some code that will capture the data at runtime and some literal values. And that's all. And then I just tell it a few things about what I expect in terms of the plugin size. So that's all it takes to wrap in a plugin. And I consider this not a lot. I hope that you consider it not a lot too. I hope that you look at this and go, wow, it would take me less than 30 minutes, maybe an hour or two at the most if you have a really complex library. And be able to take your code, which previously was only accessible to a really skilled programmer, and now make it accessible for free to a business user who is now relieved from needing to understand how to integrate your library into their app. So are there any questions about this or any comments? I'm open to both, open to comments and or questions. Yeah, Giovanni.
Would you show how somebody can get the code from, I'm not sure how somebody's gonna use the code from NPM using this tool?
Sure. So let's take a look at let's take a look at the recharts.
We don't see your screen, anyway.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna share it. Thank you. Thank you for telling me. So let's take a look at the recharts library. Right? Nice React library. It's actually a very nice library. So let's take a look at the examples. I said, all right, I wanted to do a simple bar chart. So I found one. I said, that looks good. And here's some sample code, but instead of messing with this, I opened it up in the code sandbox. Reason why was because I could play with it and I could do things like, oh, I don't need Cartesian grid, so I'm going to get rid of it. Now, of course, I have to get rid of the reference to it here as well. It's down here. There we go. Yeah, okay, good. A little bit cleaner. I like it. And so I only wanted one data series. Okay, so there we go. So I played around with it in Code Sandbox until I got it the way I liked it. And then what I did was I took a look at the imports that were still left after I'd finished cleaning it up. And then I used the, I figured out what imports I needed, and then I brought them into the plugin in this section here. I told my design compiler, this is a compiler directive. I say, go get these components out of this NPM package. And then the other half of it is, I took a look at the props that I wanted to modify, said, okay, I don't need height and width because my tool supplies that. So I just needed to be, I just needed to wrap it in the responsive container component that's provided by the recharts library. And so I got rid of a whole bunch of stuff here, margin. All I kept was the data prop, and I kept the x-axis and the bar props, and then where it's a literal here, I replaced that literal in my plugin with a reference to a variable that was getting its values from this user interface. Does that answer your question?
Kind of. So you still need to go to GitHub or somewhere to get and copy just what you need. Is that right?
Yeah, and so what I was hoping with this presentation today is I wanted to convince people who are already writing code for GitHub and for NPM that it would only take a very little bit of effort, to make that code available to non-programmers. Very low effort, and since we don't charge for this platform, it's obviously we want a lot of people to use it, but I'm making a humanitarian pitch. I'm saying let's work together to make more good code available to more people in the world.
But how, like, what is the name of this tool, by the way?
Oh, this is Neonto React Studio. So my company is Neonto. We provide other products that we charge for. We work in other languages besides React. In fact, we work in any language that you want. But we give away our React product for free. And since the React universe of packages is so large, You know, we think there's a lot of value for a lot of people if we just make as many of those packages as possible available as plugins for you have a little plugin store here. And so, am I still sharing? Yes, I am. So, you know, we want to convince people to create more plugins for React Studio, you know, for the general benefit of the world.
Okay, so let's say right now you create this hello world, and let's say this is, you want to make this available. How you make this available?
It just generates normal code. I mean, so if I were to go to, this is a work in progress because I didn't export a final version, so you have to double app. I mean, what you have here is a completely conventional, here's our source, sorry. What we have here is a completely conventional React app. And so you just run build and you integrate it into your normal delivery pipeline, however you do that. I mean, also GitHub's Git's built into this. So if you have some kind of automated delivery, then you could just do a commit to Git and let your normal delivery process run for continuous integration.
I got lost on the part, but
So here's where we can just commit it to Git like this.
Okay, that's my question. So still Git is necessary, and still you need to use GitHub and npm. So because my question is, right now you create something that is called Hello World, and it's in your local computer, and I can create something on my local computer too. And the way that I put that is exposed to the world is to put in GitHub. Like GitHub is like,
okay, well, if you want to share it with the world, if I wanted to share Hello World with the world, then I would share it as a project file. You know, these are the project files that we generate, but that's a different proposition than sharing a plugin with the world. And so we have our projects that I use the plugins in the projects, and then we have the plugins separate from the projects, right? Okay. So if you wanted to share this project with the world, you have two choices. You could share a project file, and they could go download React Studio for free and open the project file, or you could export it to a server, or you could export it to disk, and you could either export it to a server that runs it, or you could export it to disk and just send people the project. You already compile the pre-compiled project. I'll say it that way because it's been pre-compiled from our format into React. We say exported. Am I answering your question clearly?
Kinda. I'm just a little confused about. So the reason, okay. So this is for people who are not developers. I do see that this can be done for people who are not developers, but I don't see how this help with the sharing part of GitHub and npm. I don't follow that part.
Okay, so the answer is that there's only about 2 million people in North America that have the skills to use GitHub. So if you put something on GitHub and npm, there's an audience, a maximum audience of about 2 million people that could use it.
And what is the solution? Like, what is an alternative solution?
Well, if you wrap your npm library as a React Studio plugin and load it to the plugin store here, if you did that, then there'd be 48 million people who could use it, because it doesn't take a lot of skill to use a React Studio plugin. You know, this plugin that I created, all you need to do is tell it what data sheet to look at and which column names to look at to set a color. So doing this is much easier than pulling from GitHub and integrating into, you know, some handwritten code. Only 2 million people can pull from GitHub and integrate into code. 48 million people can download something from the plugin store and set a few parameters and then press open. Is that a better, clear explanation?
So that somebody needs to go to the plugin store to, so right now, not everything is in the plugin store. How you put in the plugin store? Something from NPM.
So you would need to submit it to, so if you would design a plugin, so let's say you've designed a plugin. Hang on, it's not in the plugin.
Good question. So I guess my question is like all the, I don't know how many plugins exist in NPM. All those plugins in NPM, can we use it here?
You can, and then if you want to share so you have to wrap it, you have to write a wrapper. And then once you've written the wrapper, if you want to share the wrapped plugin, you can submit it to the plugin store.
If to wrap that doesn't require coding?
Yes, to wrap it, it requires some coding knowledge. I'd consider it pretty basic coding knowledge, in my opinion. You know, even I can do it, and I am very basic.
Okay.
I'm not a good coder. So I'd say basic coding knowledge is enough to write the wrapper. And then once that's done, no coding knowledge is required to use it. Any questions from anyone else?
So what are some
interesting?
What are some successful projects that have moved on to here?
I'm trying to. So we don't demand a lot of information from our users. We don't demand their name or their company. We just let them sign up and pull it. So I am honestly unaware of most of the things that have been built out there using React Studio. I do, however, know one. Let me just find it and I can show it to you guys. It's a fellow in, I think I'm trying to remember if he's in Italy. He's in Europe somewhere, and he's building a tool for reporting, specific, repairs that the city needs to make. And so let me just find Urbano fix. So hang on. I'll load it and I'll show it to you. There we go. I found it. So this is Urbano Fix. This is an app which was a web app which was written completely using React Studio. Yeah, I think I previously signed in with this guy, if I remember correctly. And so you can create teams, and so it's my collaborator. I invited that person to collaborate. I haven't done anything yet, so there's no stats, and I don't think I created any threads. But basically the idea is that you go to a map, and you say, I have there's a pothole or there's an improvement that the city could make. So I think, that the city should, here we go, report an urban issue. I'll take a picture. I'll upload a picture, and I'll write a report, and it's already set my location automatically for me, and I would submit the report. And then the idea is that there's somebody from the city on the other end who would act on this. So this is the most sophisticated app that I'm aware of that's out there that was created with React Studio, but there are others that I'm unaware of. I know, for example, that there's a defense contractor in Herndon, Virginia that uses our product. I've spoken to them once or twice. All their products are used by the Department of Defense, though, so I have no visibility onto what those apps are. I don't know what they are.
Cool, thanks.
Hey, no problem. The code it generates is, I mean, you can see for yourself, download it and try. In my opinion, it's pretty clean. I mean, it's very idiomatic. It doesn't look anything. I'll tell you the story of how I got hooked on this product. I started as a user. I was trying to build an app factory for a company that needed to bring their cost of mobile app production down to $5,000 per app. And I found this tool and I went through their demo and I looked at the Objective-C iOS code it generated. And then I looked at the Android Java code that it generated. And I don't know if there's, I know this is the React programmers user group. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with programming in Objective-C and Android, but they are completely different paradigms. iOS uses a nested MVC pattern. Android uses this kind of fragment and intent. I don't even know what pattern it is. And it has all sorts of manifests, whereas iOS only has one plist. I mean, the structure of the code is completely different. And I opened up the code generated by one project into two different exports. I couldn't believe it. The code was absolutely idiomatic. It was absolutely clean. It was the only thing that we throw in there that you don't need for sure, that you might or might not need, is a localization table. That's, so the only code that you're getting for that you didn't ask for is the code around this localization table. Built-in product feature.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it is because it's not a very well-known tool, but it's going to occupy a really bizarre niche. The really popular no-code tools like Bubble, their niche is consumer, and so they have to have a really long tail of plugins. They have to have out of the box, like every chart and graph you could imagine, because otherwise some consumer user is going to try and use this to pie chart their church donations and be super frustrated that there's no pie chart. But we don't envision our tool that way. I mean, when I started as a customer, the reason why I selected it was because it was extensible by my own development team. And I could control my own destiny 100%. So, that's our pitch. Our pitch is that the code generated by any Neonto implementation, and React Studio included, is that there is no black box. There's no magic runtime that you need to run. There's no proprietary library that you need to include. This is 100% idiomatic native code that you control. And if you don't like a single line of it, you can change it. And, I mean, if there's anything at all you don't like about it, you change it yourself. You control it. And I myself, at least, have not found any other no-code tool that allows me to do that. So that's why I quit my job and joined the company. Any other questions?
All right, looks like maybe that's it. Well, thank you, Adam. Really appreciate it.
I have one question for you guys. I'm still trying to work on my pitch, because it's a complicated concept. It's not as easy as grandma can write an app, because that's not our pitch. Our pitch is, a company that has a development team can leverage your development team better, so that you stop doing the same things over and over again and work only on the new things. Like, so 70% of the app is already written. So you're only writing the differentiating features. You could tell me how I did. I mean, how was that pitch? Was it interesting, boring? I can take it if it was like, if you guys were not terribly interested or captivated by it, please tell me. I need to know the truth.
Yeah, I guess what I would encourage you to do is, I think you acknowledged this early, is that as developers, we kind of like instinctively bristle against no code. I mean, to be perfectly honest, it sounds like the AI taking our work away from us, and that's that's the egoistic side. The non-egoistic side is we don't trust them to do good stuff, and so I like to acknowledge that. And I thought it was interesting that it always spits out code at the end, which you can use, which I think is a I think you mentioned that's like a differentiating feature, because then it's like, okay, it's just generating stuff for you, which you can then customize if you needed to, or check, or do whatever, or inspect. Because other tools like this I've seen, it's like they'll give you like an API and then it'll send the code, and it's like it is a black box. You don't know what's going on, and to me that's always suspicious. So when talking to developers, at least that's what I would highlight is.
So then I should add. I'm hearing it. Let me check this, but there's 3 other things I should say then. Based on, first thing I should say is this in no way replaces developers. The fact that we all write, I'd be willing to bet, I'm still looking for the stats, but I'm very sure that there's still the same number of assembly programmers today as there were in 1950. So the thing about compilers is every compiler allows a new generation of programmers to spawn without destroying the jobs of the previous generation, because those guys are still needed to write the compilers.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in my opinion, all you React programmers will still have a job. It's just that instead of your job being, I am writing a single product for a single user, your job will be, I'm writing cool new stuff in a very agile way, by the way, so that people can, I'm not moving a button over 2 pixels to the left for anybody anymore. The other thing that I'll say is that every generation of programmer mistrusts every generation of compiler. When CLang first came out, people didn't trust it because a good programmer could do a better job optimizing. But I'd have to say you'd have to be a madman now to try and write your own assembly code. It's like CLang will do a better job almost every single time. So
right.
What happens is that compilers eventually become so good that you no longer notice or care that you're using one. So, it sounds like it might be those might be 2 or 3 good points to make in programmer pitches.
Yeah, I think those are big for sure.
All right, good. Well, listen, thanks for that feedback. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to pitch. And I'll let everyone go back and enjoy. I'll give you the gift of time, as they say.
Great. Thanks, Adam. And hope to see everyone next month. Don't have a speaker yet, but keep an eye on the meetup. And if we find someone, we'll update it there. All right. Have a good day, everyone. See ya.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.